Hey everybody, hope you're all doing well. My name is Steven and this is the Storytime channel. Today we have some pro-revenge stories and our first story of the day is by Rathgalra. Snipe my parking spot? Fine. This happened over a decade ago. I was running errands with my grandmother and due to her declining health, I was driving. We got to the post office in a strip mall so she could get a book of stamps and had been patiently waiting for an end spot that was just about to open up. Watched the person get into the car and settle in. I turned on my blinker, signaled my intent, and waited patiently. While waiting, I scanned the scenery and watched the other vehicle in question enter the driveway 2 large shops down and heeded no mind to them. Meanwhile, the person finished backing out, but did so in such a way that we were blocked off from accessing it rapidly. But as soon as they cleared the area, I swung a bit wide. I was driving a conversion van to approach the spot when the car I watched enter the driveway acknowledged my blinker, pointed at me, and laughed as they swooped into the spot, nearly tapping the bumper of the vehicle in the spot directly across from him. Important later. I mentioned to this smug entitled jerk that I was obviously waiting for this spot, even had my blinker on and that he should move. I know, futile, but I figured being nice would be the right approach. I was in my early 20s. "I'll only be a minute," was his smug response. "Alright, you want to play games, sir? Games we shall play." I told my grandmother to go ahead and go into the post office to do her business after confirming that we had nowhere else we needed to go in a timely manner. A plan formulating as I'm ushering her out of the vehicle so I could exact my revenge. 2 things of note. A conversion van is capable of getting insanely close to other objects and still be able to allow a person to climb in or out. And the vehicle to the right of this jerk was shorter than his, which left extra room for my grandmother to get back in. While my grandmother was in the post office, I rocked the conversion van as close as I possibly could to his bumper without touching anything, while leaving just enough room for my grandmother to get back in through the passenger door. Turns out, his business took longer than hers, so I was able to get even closer to his bumper, ultimately blocking him in with as close as he was to the car across from him, and as close as I opted to park my vehicle. He had no moves he could make without hitting other vehicles, whereas I was able to move freely to allow the other vehicle to leave, while still keeping jerk pinned in place. What made it better was my grandmother picked up a free calendar from the post office, and we used that as a means to occupy our time and attention. After coming out and seeing what I had done, he started yelling. I don't remember exactly what was said, but he was fuming. We took this opportunity to smile and wave at him, and my grandmother, catching on to what was happening and with the window cracked, loudly announced that she got a new calendar and the pictures were breathtaking and that I needed to see them, as she pushes the calendar into my field of view and loudly describes what the pictures were of, reading the captions, discussing the various shades of the many colors on each and every picture. When she was done with that, she felt obligated to obnoxiously discuss the days of the month the holidays landed on for that year, the lunar cycles, birthdays, and so on. 25 minutes rolls by at this rate. Who would have thought calendars were so interesting? And jerk gets out of his car yelling profanities at such a rate that I swear he was about to pass out. He approached my window and aggressively asked me why I was taking so long. I responded with, "Well, had you allowed me the spot I patiently waited for, I wouldn't be blocking you in right now," and drove off. Act like an a-hole, be treated like an a-hole. That's simple. So if somebody cut you off like this and you got the opportunity to block them in with your vehicle, would you take the opportunity or would you be a little bit concerned that they might try and escalate the situation, either physically or damaging the car somehow or just something else? Let me know in the comments down below. And our next story is by Loic Pravaz. Aggressive driver gets a ticket because of me. 15 years ago, driving from Paris to Brussels, French highways are sprinkled with fixed-speed radars. This is a 2-lane section of the highway and I'm using the left lane, overtaking a car that is going a bit slower than the speed limit, which is 130 kilometers per hour or 80 miles per hour. I'm right at 130 kilometers per hour. I see a tiny spot growing rapidly in my rear view mirror. It quickly turns into a car tailgating me and flashing their lights at me. The car I'm trying to shift is probably doing 125, so this is taking a bit of time. I have two options. A, I keep on driving and I pull over to the right when I'm done overtaking, not going over 130 kilometers per hour. B, accelerate so angry jerk can hurry through at the risk of getting a speeding ticket. The guy behind me, let's be sexist and assume it's a dude, gets even closer and keeps on flashing his headlights. I knew this highway really well, was doing this trip at least once a month, and I knew a radar was coming up soon. So I eased up on the throttle and took my time before pulling over to the right. Just as I did, the guy behind me angrily floors his car. A split second later, I see a flash of light. My petty revenge had worked. Perfect timing. Basically, what I've gathered over the years is if somebody is tailgating you super hard on the road, don't let them speed you up. In fact, you would probably be better off slowing down yourself. Let them get angry, try and let them get around you if you can. Don't let them inspire you to do something stupid and potentially dangerous. This next story is by Princess of Cute. I have redone a group project on one evening because my group mates were really lazy. So I have had some people saying it was bad what I did and some that were on my side. Maybe I was just a petty a-hole, but maybe some just never were in such a situation, so they have no clue how that feels. You all probably know these people that barely do anything in a group project. I had to do a project, a learning video, with only such people in my group. Because of that, I was trying my best to manage that, and after telling them what we had to do, they picked their parts. Those were already the easiest. It's not even as if it was hard. However, the part we had to do together, I did alone while they were joking around. The parts they were supposed to do alone were not prepared well, even though I already sent them anything they needed. All they had to do was read it and memorize it. They weren't prepared for the recording of the video, and after the dude who was supposed to send me his voice recording of the text he needed to read over WhatsApp as a voice message, I had enough. I redid his reading, redid the recording as we only stopped with the product we had because there was no time left and none of them would have wanted to spend their afternoon remaking it. Only thing I did to protect them somewhat was telling the teacher that I have lost our work and have redone it alone. She said that it was fine as she saw what they did over the past lessons we worked together. In the end, I walked out with a good grade and they, well, weren't looking all too happy about their grades. If they hadn't joked around when we had to do our research, maybe I wouldn't have done that. But yeah, some might say I did go too far, but I think one would say different if they had been in my situation. But who knows? So personally, I don't think OP went too far with this. It was a group project and all the other people in that group intentionally were tanking the grade when OP was the only one wanting to put the work in for it. That's not right. It's great that OP was allowed to do it themselves again and get a proper grade for it. And the guys that didn't reaped what they sowed. This next story is by RiderFighter201. Customer flips out over the word courtesy, loses out on fee waiver. This technically wasn't my petty revenge, but that of a coworker of mine that I was witness to. I worked in a call center for a credit card company. At the time, there was a $10 fee for processing a payment over the phone. I'm not here to justify it, that's just what it was and it was perfectly legal. It was one of those things that a CSR could choose to waive, but were definitely not required to and in fact would have to justify their reasoning for waiving it. Waive too many and you'll get a lesser raise, worse shift choices, etc. So not a lot of people waive them. Anyway, I was sitting with a girl listening to her call as part of my job at the time and she received a call that went like this, verbatim. "I want to make a payment over the phone," the customer said gruffly. "That's no problem," replied the rep. "It does have to be with a check and there is a $10 processing fee for that."
"A fee? I didn't know there was a fee."
"Well, I can waive it for you as a courtesy since this is your first time paying by phone. Just remember you can always pay online or in the store."
"A courtesy?" he shrieked, cutting her off. "It isn't a courtesy. You can't consider it a courtesy if there's no other way to pay the dang bill."
"I'm going to waive it for you, sir," she pleaded, trying to talk him down from his unhinged fury. "It's no problem, but there are other payment methods. As I was saying, you can—"
"This isn't right,"
he continued to berate her.
"How dare you say it's a courtesy? I want to talk to your supervisor right now."
At that point, she was required to transfer to a supervisor, getting someone I knew quite well and who had a little patience for jerk customers. I didn't hear that call myself, but I talked to the supervisor after. Upon getting the call, the customer screamed at her, the supervisor, for the word courtesy being used and demanded an apology and to pay his bill. She apologized, she was required to, we all were regardless of fault or logic when talking to a customer, and offered to take his payment. However, because he was being a butt, she refused to waive the $10 fee, which was her prerogative and totally allowed. The prior rep had made a judgment call to offer to waive the fee. That was the individual's decision, and since he didn't allow her to process the payment, thus he didn't accept her offer. The next person was not bound by that, and the way our phones were set up, it was impossible to transfer it back to the original CSR. It is definitely a fine line she towed, but it was still allowed. He ultimately made the payment with the fee, and that was that. Let that be a lesson. Don't be a tick and set your ego aside. Let's be real, a lot of these companies are going to try and nickel and dime you any way they can, especially with seemingly incredibly dumb fees. Like, OP was trying to not even defend it, like obviously $10 for a phone payment. Thing is, they were willing to waive the fee. They should have just took it and run and been like, "Oh great, thank you." Dude was belligerent and had to pay for it. Our next story is by Shrunk Overlord. My dog gets revenge on my dad. Back before I was born, and shortly after my dad got deployed for the Navy, my mom got a nice little wiener dog mix. Her name was Jewel. My mom spent a long time training that dog while he was overseas, and by the end of it, Jewel was well trained and especially potty trained. This is important later. When my dad got back from deployment, he wasn't too happy with sharing a bed with Jewel, so he had her sleep in the kitchen that night. Not only did she bark for most of the night, when my dad got back from work the next day, he found his pillow covered in dog pee. Safe to say, he never complained about sleeping with Jewel again. To be fair, if I found out that a dog peed on my pillow, I probably would have some concerns about sleeping with the dog. I'm glad to hear that it seems like everything resolved itself from that point on. Our next story is by Letters from Meme, My Awesome Neighbor. So the summer was out gardening, was in regular shorts and shirt. My kids playing in the kid pool, when the dogs are going crazy at the gate. So I see a man say hi. He stated that he had just moved in and his kids could see my family's backyard. Asked if I could dress more modestly. I had a what the freak look. He said to cover my arms and legs and not let the kids run in underwear. I said no thank you and to leave my property. My children had swimsuits on, they were not naked. I kept getting dirty looks from him on walks. He asked 2 more times. So this Christmas, we put up the biblical picture of Adam and Eve naked in the Garden of Eden. There is now a for sale sign up after only a year. We also added another dog and security cameras. You're in the privacy of your own backyard having a pool party. What do you think you're going to wear? A tuxedo and a full dress? They needed to mind their own darn business. This next story is by Pam Ale. Yes, I'm petty. I have new neighbors. Besides being extremely noisy, I've also noticed random garbage thrown into my backyard. This included box tape, cigarette butts, water bottles, and other plastic disposables. Basically stuff that they're too lazy to put into a rubbish bin. Me being petty, every time they threw trash over, I would pick it up and shove it through one of their windows that's within arm's reach from my backyard. The landlord illegally built right up to the property line. My brother thinks I should have spoken to them about it. I don't think so. I shouldn't have to tell grown adults not to throw garbage into a neighbor's yard. I think they got the picture. Haven't seen any garbage in my yard for a few days. I think if it was pretty obvious that the neighbor was throwing trash into your yard, I wouldn't have any qualms picking it up and tossing it right back into theirs. Throwing it literally into their window, I would probably be a little bit more sketched out about that, but that's just me and where I kind of stand with boundaries. And our final story of the day is by Run Me Over With a Car. Write me a referral because I stood at my bus stop. Prepare to be slightly inconvenienced. I'm a high school student and I take the bus every day. I have had the same bus stop for the entire first semester of school with no issues whatsoever, until recently. Last week, we got a new bus driver or a substitute bus driver or something. As soon as I got on the bus, she started yelling at me because apparently my bus stop isn't an actual bus stop, and writes me a bus referral because I was standing there. I got to school and checked the bus route, where it clearly has my bus stop listed. I try to explain to the bus driver later when I go home that it was an actual stop, but she didn't believe me. She then, rather sarcastically, told me that a different stop was actually my bus stop and told me to get off there instead. Cue my revenge. There was another bus stop that is closer to my house than the one she had pointed out to me. This bus stop has no one that gets on or off there, so the bus driver never has to stop there. I decide that this will be my new bus stop. I started getting on and off the bus stop every day, and she passes my old bus stop every day just like usual. It brings me so much delight knowing she is just as inconvenienced as she would have been if she hadn't said anything at all. Edit, we got our usual bus driver back, so I'm at my regular stop now. It was sweet while it lasted. I'm not really sure what a bus referral is, but if you checked and you found out that it was a legitimate bus stop, I would try and escalate that and make my issue known, my point known, because why in God's name should you have to get in trouble for doing exactly the right thing? That bus driver sounded like an absolute grouch, the kind that demands near silent volume on the bus. Nobody wants that. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. So if you have a favorite story of the day, let me know which story and why in the comments down below. But besides that, if you enjoyed the video, please consider giving it a like, and if you haven't, subscribe and turn notifications on so you'll never miss an upcoming video. No matter what you do, whether it's just viewing the video, liking, subscribing, turning notifications on, I appreciate the heck out of it. Every little thing that you do helps the channel grow that much more, and I can't thank you enough for it. So until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful day, and I'll be right here next time on the Storytime channel.